So guys, are you able to view the slides?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So basically, we have dealt with the S2 receptor antagonist, right, in the last class, right? So now, what is the major difference between when we talk about the S2 receptor antagonist and the gastric proton pump inhibitor, right? So basically, there are two common things. Basically, when we are blocking the histamine 2 receptor or the H2 receptor, what we are doing, we are controlling the acid level inside the stomach, right? So that was the first thing, but the problem was that the acid in the stomach was regulated by some other receptors also, like for example acetylcholine, and the gastrin also plays a role in inducing the acid, right? So now basically all these three receptors, when we talk about the histamine S2 receptors, the acetylcholine M3 receptor, and the gastrin chemokine receptor CCK2 receptor, right? So basically they all induces the acid release via the parietal cell, right? So in the parietal cell there are the proton pumps, right, which actually generate the acid, or which efflux the protons H plus ions into the stomach, right? So now blocking this gastric proton pump will be an effective strategy, right, to control the acid inside the stomach, right? So how we do this? So we'll be discussing today about the medicinal chemistry of these gastric proton pump inhibitor, for what purpose they are used, and how they are more beneficial in comparison to the individual S2 receptor antagonists, right? So we'll be discussing this thing, and also about the general chemistry, and what should be our drug look like when we are actually developing some gastric proton pump inhibitor, right? So we'll be discussing these things today. So this was our first lecture, right, on the S2 receptor, where we discussed basically this thing. Let me open the pointer, right? So this thing we have dealt, right? We have dealt about the histamine S2 receptor antagonist. What they are doing, they are actually inhibiting the binding of these histamine to the histamine receptor, right, or the H2 receptor, right? So basically this is an GPCR activated pathway, right? GPCR are indulged with the histamine receptor. So basically if the drug is acting, it is inhibiting the GPCR receptor, right? So this is the thing. The other receptor are the acetylcholine and the gastrin, which are not currently in your syllabus, right? So we are focusing on this thing. So now today what we are going to do, we are actually going to study about the medicinal chemistry of these proton pump inhibitor, right? So these proton pump inhibitor cumulatively are taking signals from what? They are taking the signals from the histamine receptor, they are taking the signals from this acetylcholine receptor or the muscarinic receptor, and as well as from the chemokine receptor, right? So if we are blocking this pump, this proton pump, right, what we are doing, we are blocking all these three pathways: the histamine pathway, the acetylcholine pathway, and the gastrin pathway, right? So this is the common thing, right? So now this thing we have discussed already, right? So basically the acetylcholine and the gastrin are regulated by the calcium dependent pathway, whereas the histamine is actually regulated by the GPCR pathway, where the ATP is converted to the CAMP, right, where it is releasing the hydrogen and the potassium at the ATPase pump, and these hydrogen are coming to the gastric lumen or inside the stomach to increase the acidity, right? So basically what is happening, the proton is coming and the chloride is coming in the exchange of a potassium. So potassium is going from the gastric lumen to the parietal cell, and in lieu of that the chlorine is coming into the gastric lumen along with the potassium. So basically this is the channel, the hydrogen and the potassium pump. So basically the hydrogen in is exchanged in presence of this potassium. So for every hydrogen that goes inside this gastric lumen, one potassium ion goes to the parietal cell, right? And then there are the chloride channels, which actually combines with this hydrogen and forms the hydrogen chloride gas. And all you already know there is water, so it will dissolve there and it will form a HCl aqueous form there in the stomach. right? So this is the thing. So I'll be just any doubts or questions, queries? Okay, right. So basically the proton pump inhibitor, what will do, they will actually block this pump, right? They will basically block this pump. And if they are blocking this thing, if they are blocking this pump, what will happen? This hydrogen will not be able to get exchanged, right? If the hydrogen is not coming, basically see, when we are talking about the acid, right? So basically the acidity is determined the presence of the hydronium ion or the H positive ion, right? Both are the same thing. We can write like it as 3O positive, or we can like write it like H positive, right? So both are the same thing. So basically if we are able to block this pump, the effect of all these three things will come into the halt, right? And this proton or this hydronium ion will not be get transferred into this stomach, right? Gastric lumen. So acidity won't rise, right? So this is the main purpose of using the S2 receptors, right? So now this is the key take message. Because the hydrogen potassium ATPase pump is the final step of the acid secretion, an inhibitor of this enzyme is more effective than receptor antagonist in suppressing gastric acid secretion. So it says if we are using a proton pump inhibitor, right, it is more effective than we are using the acetylcholine inhibitor or the histamine receptor antagonist or the CCK2 receptor antagonist, right? So basically this molecule is more effective because all these three pathways are regulating and ending up at here, this point, this proton pump, right? So inhibiting this thing will be a very beneficial thing to control the acid level inside the stomach, right? So now I'll just play a small video, right? Right. So I'll be explaining what is happening in the video, right? So this is what the crux of the out of the video, right? So basically, it is saying that all see, there is one question to be asked, right? So basically, you all are working in the drug development and the drug discovery. You know something about the drug, how the drug actually act, right? You know about the pharmacokinetics. So actually, I have a question to ask, right? For example, you have heard about the absorption, right? Drug absorption. Have you heard about that? Anyone?
Yes, sir.
Okay. See, for example, now we are actually talking about the drugs that are actually acting inside the stomach, right? Agree? जो भी हम अभी ड्रग डिस्कस कर रहे हैं, दे आर एक्टिंग इन द स्टमक, राइट, इन द पैराइटल सेल, राइट. Anyone? Am I right? All the drugs that we are talking about to regulate the acid, they are acting inside the stomach, basically in the parietal cell.
Yes, sir.
Right? So now, see, basically you have learned in the pharmacology and in the pharmaceutics that a drug need to get absorbed into the blood, right? For a bioavailability, right? You know that thing, right? So can anybody tell what is that bioavailability? The extent of the drug that is going to the blood, right? This is the thing.
Yes,
This is
sir.
what we called about the bioavailable drug, right? So now,
Yes, sir.
if we are talking about some conditions like the ulcer or the acidity, तो क्या उस केस में ड्रग की कोई बायो अवेलेबिलिटी होनी चाहिए या नहीं होनी चाहिए? Anybody? What we want from the drug there? Should it get more bioavailable? The drug should come to the blood, or should it be confined to the stomach? क्या होना चाहिए तुम्हारे हिसाब से? Chalo, I'll give you an interesting example. For example, you know about the mouth ulcers. You know about the mouth ulcers, right? There are sometimes the inflammation in the mouth,
Sir.
the teeth, or in the tongue, something like that. So what we do basically, we actually use some gels, right? So that gel is actually going to the body or not? Or it is adding to that particular site?
No, sir.
नहीं ना? तो अब
Nice, sir.
basically क्या है, when we are talking about, see, when we are talking about the ulcer, so basically the maximum drug of almost 70% of drug get 40-50% of drug get absorbed from the stomach, and the rest get absorbed from the intestine, right? We all know this thing. So right, so now when we are talking about the ulcer, what we need, that our drug should not cross the stomach, right? Our drug should be confined to the stomach, right? ये था. तो उसके लिए हमें क्या चाहिए? What we require from a drug? What will be the condition that the drug will remain in the stomach only? It will not get absorbed. What are the conditions? What could be the chemical nature of the drug? Will it be the acidic drug? Will it be the basic drug? Will it be the neutral drug? Anybody? Anyone? This is a very interesting question. What do you think? What could be the nature of, what could be the chemical nature of that drug will be? Anyone?
Sir, maybe basic.
Yes, you are right. It should be basic. So what the basic will do? Basic will actually get ionized inside the acidic environment, right? So once a drug will get ionized, it will not be able to cross that particular membrane. Am I right?
Yes, sir.
Right? So the same thing what we expect from the proton pump inhibitor or the S2 receptor antagonist, what we require, see, basically the S2 receptor are acting on the surface, right? So there is no problem with this. For example, this is the acetylcholine receptor, this is histamine receptor, or this is the gastrin receptor. So basically the drugs are acting here on the surface of this parietal cell, right? But when we are talking about this proton pump, the drug needs to go inside the cell, right? Because the proton pump are located on the membrane inside the cell, because the hydrogen is actually exchanging from inside of the parietal cell to the gastric lumen, and the potassium is exchanged from the gastric lumen to the parietal cell, right? So basically the parietal cell are located in the transmembrane region of the parietal cell, right? This proton pump is actually located in the transmembrane location of this parietal cell, right? So what we need, that when a drug enter this cell, it should remain confined there, right? So the first thing will be the drug should be in the basic form, means the drug, as soon as it enters this parietal cell, it should get ionized, and if it is getting ionized, the higher concentration of the drug will be here, right? Right. For example, you know about the efficacy. Efficacy क्या होता है? For example, a drug का response क्या आ रहा है? The pharmacological response of that particular drug, right? So now For efficacy, what we need? For the efficacy, we need that जो हमारा target site है, for example, whatever the target site we have, the drug should be confined to that particular target site, right? For example, if we are using some drug that are used to treat some CNS disorders, right? So हमारा main purpose क्या होगा? The drug should cross the blood-brain barrier and should remain confined to the CNS, right? So this is the thing. So now when for example, when we are treating the ulcer, right, or we are treating the acidity, what we require that our molecule or the drug should remain confined inside the parietal cell, right? So for this purpose, when we are designing the drug or when we are developing the drug, we have to consider the chemical nature of the drug also, right? So this is the very important thing, right? So I'll be discussing about this thing also. So now basically before going forward, let us discuss something about the proton pump, about the chemistry of the proton pump, right? Because this is the medicinal chemistry class and I'll be discussing about the proton pump chemistry. So now when we are talking about the proton pump, right? So everybody knows that in the body when there is an exchange of ions, right, exchange of ions are the part of active diffusion, right? And what is that active diffusion? Active diffusion means it requires some ATPs, right? Because ATPs are the power currency, right? They are produced in the mitochondria, which is the powerhouse of the cell, and they are utilized for the active diffusion or the active activities inside the body. For example, this proton pump. So this proton pump is called the ATPase proton pump. Why it is called the ATPase? Because the ATP is required for its activation, right? When the ATP is getting involved or when the ATP is interacting with the proton pump, the hydrogen is exchanged, right, with potassium, right? So this is the main thing. This is the main thing. So basically now what we have a we have a channel which is regulated by the ATP. So basically these proton pump inhibitor will be acting on the ATP binding site, right? Where the ATP is binding, they will be competing with the ATP binding site, and instead of ATP, they will be binding there, right? So how they will be binding? So we'll be discussing that thing. So firstly, the ATP binding site or the proton pump has two sites, right? The catalytic alpha subunit site and a glycosylated regulatory beta subunit. So basically the alpha subunit is there and the beta subunit is there, right? So two protein domains are there, alpha subunit and the beta subunit, right? So that all the proton pump inhibitors will bind to this alpha subunit, this one. This is the catalytic alpha unit because this is actually catalyzing the reaction, right? Catalyzing the reaction means it is exchanging the hydrogen in lieu of the potassium, right? So this is the common thing, right? So now the alpha subunit has a transmembrane. It's a 10 transmembrane containing domain, like same like the GPCR. GPCR is a 7 transmembrane. It is 10 transmembrane. So now what is the important thing here? It have 28 cysteine amino acids, right? So when we are talking about the alpha protein or the alpha subunit, it is made up of amino acid, right? So what are the important amino acid in this alpha subunit? So basically these are the cysteine, right? So there are 28 cysteine molecules, right? And when we are talking the cysteine, it is basically the sulfur containing amino acid, right? So among all these cysteine 813. So the amino acid number 813. For example, you know about the protein, right? Proteins are the long chains of amino acid. They can be the chains or they can be the globular also, right? Primary, secondary, and the tertiary structure they have. So basically this cysteine that is coming at the position number 813 is one of the critical amino acid that is required by the proton pump inhibitors, right? So basically these proton pump inhibitor forms the bond with the cysteine 813 and they prevent the binding of ATP, right? So this is the first foremost thing, right? So take home message: cysteine 813 will interact with all the activated PPI structure regardless of their chemical reactivity. So this is a very important question regarding to your GPAT examination, right? Because in the GPAT examination, they might ask you ki which is the exact amino acid in which the proton pump inhibitors act, right? So the correct answer will be the cysteine 813. or in the some cases they might give you some different amino acid, and they may ask you which is the amino acid which actually interact with the proton pump inhibitor. So basically these are the cysteines, right? Always remember this thing, right? So now see, all the proton pump inhibitors will be interacting with the cysteine, right? So cysteine 813 was the important one. Other cysteine was 892 for the omeprazole, right? Lansoprazole, it is cysteine 321, and for pantoprazole and tentoprazole 813 and the 822 cysteine, right? The cysteine present at the position number 822. So these are the important amino acids. So basically the common amino acid is this 813, right? So now what happened? Firstly, whenever we are taking the proton pump inhibitor, right? So what is happening? They are going inside the stomach and they are actually getting protonated. So I'll be just showing you some mechanism. So basically before going that, we have a pharmacophore for the proton pump inhibitor. So what it look like? So basically your molecule, all the proton pump inhibitors, right? What they are made up of? They are made up of two heteroatoms, right? Heterocyclic molecules. So one is the benzimidazole. This is the benzimidazole, and the second is this thing, pyridine ring, right? So this thing is the pyridine ring, right? So now what we have a linkage and we have a sulfoxide, right? We have a sulfoxide here, right? So now basically we have two nitrogens, one nitrogen, two nitrogen, and the three nitrogen, right? So this nitrogen, this pyridine ring nitrogen is responsible for pKa1, and this benzimidazole nitrogen is responsible for pKa2, right? So what is this thing? I'll be telling you, right? So I'll be discussing you what is this pK1 and what is this pKa2, right? pKa basically means the site of the protonation where the proton will act or proton will react, right? So there are the two protonation sites, important two protonation site. One is this one and the second one is this one, but this can be in the tautomeric form. So this pKa2 site can be this also, this one also, right? Because this is in tautomerism, imidazole. You all remember this thing, right? So the important pKa1 site is in the pyridine ring, and the second is on the benzimidazole ring, right? So basically the pKa sites are the sites where the proton can act, right? Or the proton can attack, right? So now we'll be discussing something about these things. Right. So what we have discussed about that, when we are actually talking about the proton pump inhibitor, the proton pump inhibitors, all the drugs pertaining to the proton pump inhibitor should confine within the stomach, right? So this is the thing. So basically they have a very weak, they are basically acting as a very weak base, having a pKa1 between 3.8 and 4.9. So pKa1 will be of the pyridine ring, right? And the second pKa will be of the benzimidazole ring. So basically I will not discuss this word, so I'll be just showing you some chemical reaction. So right, so this is your molecule, this is your molecule. So we were saying this pyridine is pKa1 is responsible for the pKa1. So basically pKa1 means the first attack of the proton will be at this site, followed by this one, right? So basically if the proton is coming here, the first proton is coming here, it will be having a higher pKa in comparison to this thing, right? So what is happening? So the first proton is coming and attacking at this site, right? See this thing, this proton is attacking at this site. So this is forming a monocation, right? And when the drug will be in the cationic form, what will happen? The drug will not get absorbed into the blood, right? So this is the first thing. So these pKa1 value ensure that the pyridine nitrogen of all the PPIs will be almost completely cationic at low pH of the parietal cells, thus trapping the drug right at the site of the action. So this protonation will do what? This protonation will ensure that the molecule will remain confined inside the parietal cell. So this is the first thing, right? So now, are you getting this point? Are you getting the point? Means what is the basic requirement for that proton pump inhibitor? If someone is having any confusion, they may ask. Right. So what the first protonation is doing, the first protonation is actually trapping the drug at the site of the axon, right? So this is the take home message. This acid space dependent concentration of the proton pump inhibitor is the first important property, right, that determines their therapeutic index. So what is the therapeutic index now? You might be knowing is actually related with the drug efficacy, right? What is the dose and what is the response, right? So giving a concentration as a luminal surface of the pump that is about 1000-fold higher than in the blood. So this means that when we are taking the proton pump inhibitor and when it is going inside the stomach, it is getting protonated. And once it is protonated, it is coming into the form of monocation, and the monocation forms will not get absorbed to the blood, right? So when our drug will not get absorbed to the blood, what will happen? The concentration of the drug at the parietal cell will become very high as compared to the blood, right? So this is the first point. So if you do not know about the pKa, just go back and read about the Henderson-Hasselbalch equation, right? The general term is the lower the pKa, the stronger the acid, and the greater the ability to donate a proton in the aqueous solution, right? So we should have a higher pKa first, right, of a molecule. So we are having the pKa between 3 to 4, right? So that means they are the basic drug, right? Now we will be talking about the second step, right? Now the second step, what will happen? The second step, the acid dependent conversion from the accumulated product to the activated species, which are highly reactive thiophilic reagent. So I'll be going to the structure, right? So I have just given the complete summary what is happening, right? So I'll be discussing the individual. So what we have got the monocation, right? We have got the monocation. Now what will happen? This monocation will undergo a reaction, right? So basically now there will be a second chance कि there will be a monocation can be formed at this side also, right? Because two are the pKa centers. One is this and the second is this. So basically there will be an equilibrium between this side and this side, right? But the important will be the formation of this dication. So basically this will be protonated first. This nitrogen will be protonated first and followed by this second nitrogen. So from the monocation, there will be a formation of the dication, right? So basically when there will be a dication formation, the molecule will become more ionic and it will remain for a longer duration in the stomach or in the parietal cell, right? So this is actually important, the formation of the cation species. So cation, firstly it will be a monocation, then secondly it will form a dication, right? So this is the thing, right? So now what will happen? This cation form, this nitrogen will actually attack at this electrophilic center or the electrophilic carbon, right? Because this nitrogen is positively charged, and here what we have, here there is an extra charge, right? There is an extra charge. See the valency of the nitrogen, 1, 2, 3 and the 4. So there is a quaternary nitrogen now, right? So the quaternary nitrogen is attacking at this highly electrophilic carbon, and when it will be reacting with the this highly electrophilic carbon, what will happen? This proton will be coming out, expelled. This proton will be expelled, and this sulfonyl moiety or the sulfonyl moiety will form this sulfonylic acid analog. So basically this spiro compound which is formed will be very unstable, right? So this will be converted into the sulfonylic acid analog first. So this is the proactive form. This is the proactive form, right? So from this sulfonylic acid, what will form? This sulfonylic acid will then bind to the cysteine. These will bind importantly to cysteine 813, which are present in the proton pump, right? So it will be binding to the cysteine. Basically this what we call the sulfhydryl or the sulfur group will be binding to the cysteine. So basically this sulfanic acid is converting to the sulfonamide analog. So this is the tetracyclic molecule, right? And this molecule is actually binding to the proton pump, right? This sulfur moiety, this sulfur moiety is actually binding to the sulfur of the cysteine, right? So sulfur bond is forming there, right? So this is the disulfide bond. This is the disulfide bond. So one sulfur is from the drug and one sulfur is from the cysteine, right? So basically this active form is binding to the cysteine residue of the ATPase pump, and this is how the molecule is actually inhibiting the proton pump, right? So this is the common mechanism. So in your syllabus, basically these are the following 4 drugs, right, that are in your syllabus. So see, now the common thing in the drug, we have all the drugs have these benzimidazole molecule, right? This thing, omeprazole, rabeprazole, pantoprazole, and we see the lansoprazole. The second thing what we are having this pyridine ring, this one everywhere. The common thing is there, the pyridine ring. See, again the pyridine ring, again the pyridine ring, right? Again the sulfonyl molecule, this sulfoxide, right? This one, this is a common thing, right? So these all things are common when we are having a proton pump inhibitor. So the basic pharmacophore will be same, right? Now we'll be just going through some of the SAR studies. What are the requirements, right? So this was the general formula. All the molecules belong to the same formulas, right? So now see the first point, the electron donating substituents on the pyridine ring. This is the pyridine ring. Especially at the R1 will push electron to the pyridine nitrogen and increase the percentage existing in the cationic form at the gastric pH. So basically it is saying that this R1 position or this para position to this nitrogen should have a electron donating substituent. For example, see this molecule, for example this thing, right? Again here, right? So we are having the electron donating groups, right? See again, all are at the para position or at the 4th position to this nitrogen. Everywhere you can see this 4th position is the electron donating group, right? So what the electron donating groups are doing, they are actually pushing the electron to the pyridine nitrogen, and when there will be an electron, this will become more negative, and there will be very high chances that this will get protonated, right? Whenever there will be a negative charge, the positive hydrogen can attack very easily, right? So when I am putting an electron donating group, it is increasing the electron density here, and if it is increasing the electron density, what is happening? The chances of proton attack become very high, right? So this is the first thing, right? So what will happen if the proton attack will become very high? The chances of proton attack will become very high. What will happen? This will be converted into the monocationic form, right? And when the drug will be in the cationic form, it will retain for a longer time in the gastric pH, right? So this is the thing. So enhance the rate of formation of the active sulfonic acid sulfonamide rearrangement product. So firstly, what will it will do? It will increase the percentage of existing cationic form at the gastric pH, right? And the second thing what it will do, it will increase the conversion of this prodrug. All the proton pump inhibitor are the prodrugs, right? So it will enhance the rate of formation to the sulfonic acid and the sulfonamide derivatives, right? So this is the thing. Now the second thing is this one, the second pKa, right? The pKa value of the benzimidazole N3 designated as pKa2 is much lower than that of the pyridine nitrogen, right? So what we are saying that the pKa of this benzimidazole is less in comparison to the pKa of this pyridine ring, right? So this means if, chalo, a question is there now. If this nitrogen will have a higher pKa in comparison to this, what will happen? Anyone? If this nitrogen will have, if the benzimidazole nitrogen will have a higher pKa, what will happen actually? Anyone can answer this. See, if this will be having a higher pKa, this will be getting protonated first, right? And if this will be getting protonated first, this nitrogen will be not able to attack at this C2 carbon, right? And if it will not be able to attack the C2 carbon, that tetrameric form or the tetra molecule will not be formed, right? Basically the sulfanic acid and the sulfonamide rearrangement product will not form, right? So the first protonation site should always be this pyridine molecule, right? So to make this happen, what we require? We require that pKa1 should be higher in comparison to the pKa2. So how we are making this possible? We are making this possible by inserting the electron donating group at the R1 position, right? So this is the common thing, right? So now we are talking about the pKa2. So we are saying that the pKa2 is always lower than the pKa1, right? So this is the thing, the pKa value of the benzimidazole N3 designated as pKa2 is much lower than that of a pyridine nitrogen and ranges from what? 0.11, where there in the pKa1 we were talking about the 3.24, 3 point something to 4.8, right? But it is becoming very less. The pKa2 is very less, right? So now this lower pKa values means that the benzimidazole ring protonates after the pyridine ring, right? So this is the important thing. This benzimidazole is actually protonating after this monocation has been formed at this site, right, to form the dication, right? So this is the basic utility of the pKa1 and pKa2, right? So this is the thing. And the third important point, electron donating substituent on the C5 position of the benzimidazole ring will push electron to the N3 and increase the percentage existing in the cationic form at the gastric pH. So again, we can increase the electron density at this point, right? Why we need to increase the electron density? So the proton can easily attack, or the electrophile, the basically the proton is an electrophile. So if we are increasing the electron density, we are making it more what? We are making it more negative, right? So a proton can come and attack here. So the same thing in the R1 we are putting the electron donating group. So in the same way we can put the electron donating group at the R4 position of the benzimidazole to increase the electron density at this N3, right? So I'll be showing you some examples, right? So now see this thing, we are putting a electron donating group in the benzimidazole fourth position. See, this is again one of the molecule where we are doing this thing, right? What this is doing, this is actually increasing the electron density over this side, right? And the same way, these molecules, these electron donating group are increasing the electron density at this side. Why we are requiring the electron density? To so that the proton can attack easily, right? And what will happen? The sulfonic acid and the sulfonamide molecule will form and they will actually bind to the cysteine, right? So this is all about your that thing, proton pump inhibitors, right? So now if anybody have any questions to ask, they may ask. Or if someone is having doubt, they are not understanding something on this topic, they may ask. But what I will request you that, 1 second, I have just forgot to mention one thing. Right. So there is one paper. I'll be forwarding the slides to you. So there will be a paper, the chemical elegant proton pump interpreter. So you can just have a read on this thing also. Right. This is a very wonderful paper. Right. So you can just read this paper. Right. I'll be sharing you the link and I will be sharing you this paper also. Right. So this will be a very wonderful paper to read. So now if anybody has any doubts, question, queries or anything, they may ask. Anyone? So I'll be just summarizing the thing. So basically when we are dealing with the proton pump inhibitor, what we require, right? So basically why we are using the proton pump inhibitor? First thing, right? When there is a high acid reflux in the stomach, or there are the conditions like the ulcers, right? Or we say that Zollinger-Ellison syndrome is there, right? Or we say there is high amount of acidity, right, in the stomach, right? So basically we are using that time what? The proton pump inhibitor, right? Because if we are blocking the histamine, if you are blocking the histamine receptor or the H2 receptor, the acid can increase by the receptor called acetylcholine, the M3 receptor, or by the chemokine receptor, right? So even if you are blocking one receptor, the other two receptors are functional, right? So if they are functional, what they are going to do, they are going to increase the acid level in the stomach, right? So to control this acidity, right, or the acidic concentration in the stomach, what we are doing, we are using the proton pump inhibitor, right? So now when we are talking about the proton pump are basically the ATPase pump, right, which are located on the transmembrane of the parietal cell, right? So what we require, first thing, we require that our drug should remain confined to the stomach, right? So this is the first thing, right? So how we do that? We do that by using two different types of pKa's in a single molecule, right? So basically when we are talking about this thing, the proton pump inhibitor, we have a common structure where we have what? We have basically a benzimidazole molecule and we have a pyridine molecule, right? So the pyridine molecule is having the higher pKa, right? So if it is having the higher pKa, it will get protonated first, right? Then what we have a benzimidazole, right? So second protonation will occur at the benzimidazole N3 position, right? So if the molecule will convert from the monocation to the dication, it will remain confined inside the stomach or inside the parietal cell, right? And it will show its therapeutic response. So this is the first thing. The second thing is that basically about the proton pump. So basically when we are talking about the proton pump, they are actually catalyzed by the ATPs, right? And when we look at the active binding site of that ATP, what we have the cysteine residues, right? So basically the important cysteine residue was 813, right? Cysteine 813 was an important residue where all the proton pump inhibitors were coming and interacting and blocking the ATP binding. And when the ATP binding is blocked, what is happening? The proton are not exchanged with the potassiums, right? So this is the first thing, right? So this is the first thing. So to further enhance the activity or the efficacy of the molecule, what we are doing, we were placing the electron donating group in the fourth position of the pyridine ring and in the fifth position of the benzimidazole ring, right? So that what that electron donating group will do, that will actually enhance the electron density at the respective nitrogens, right? So this is the just summary of this topic. Hope this H2 inhibitors and this proton pump was very what we call interesting thing, right? You might have got good amount of knowledge with this thing, right? So if anybody have any doubts, queries or questions, they may ask. Anyone, any doubts, queries or anything? I'll be just uploading the slides today, right? And you can just go through the slides and on Wednesday we can have a discussion, so that particularly the reaction is very important, right? If you can just go to the reaction. That reaction is also available in that paper, which I have just shown you the link, right? So you can just go through that mechanism, and if there will be some problem, we can discuss. Although the mechanism is very simple. See, simply this is there is happening. There is the first monocation formation is there. Then there is a formation of the secondary cation. Then there is a formation of the sulfonic acid, and there is a formation of a sulfonamide, right? And the sulfonamide is the active form of the proton pump inhibitor drug. All that proton pump inhibitor drug get converted into the sulfanilamide, right? And the sulfanilamide is doing what? Sulfanilamide have a sulfur group that is attaching to the cysteine residue of the ATPase pump and is inhibiting the ATPase pump by forming a disulfide bond, right? Irreversible disulfide bond. So this is the thing, right? You can just revise the thing, and if there will be some questions or queries, you may ask, right? So open to you all. If you have any doubts or something, you may ask, or otherwise I'll just cancel this call. So I think there is no more questions. So guys, thank you for joining, right? and just go through the slides I'll be uploading and then get your question ready, right? So you may leave. If there is no questions or queries, you may leave.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.